Hello, another Sunday show. This is the second show in our series, What Integrative Medicine in Cancer Means to Me, or to you. It's part of our 20th birthday anniversary celebrations, if you like, it's a series. I'm Chris Williams, and my very special guest today is Sandra Tierney. So good morning, Sandra. How are you?
Good morning, Chris. I'm perfect, thank you.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear it. Good. We don't need me. All right. First of all, tell us a bit about yourself, because I know you're in the police force and you ride horses and things like that. Tell us a bit more about it.
So I'm 62, and a birthday they said I wouldn't make, and I got diagnosed with ovarian cancer in May 2018, and I'm stage 3C. I was a Serbian police officer then. I retired from the police 3 years ago, and I've been working up until the last 8 weeks interviewing people. So I ride my horse every day. I've always been active. I go to the gym every day. I walk my dog. I'm very lucky. I have the most amazing family and the most amazing friends, but only what I deserve.
Sense of community. Did you always go to the gym, or was this something new? I mean, I understand you always rode your horse, but is it new, the gym? Or
I used to play netball a lot until I got. No, I've always gone to the gym. I've always had sports have always been an active part of my life. I played netball up to county level for quite a long time, and I said I've always walked, but I can't really have a day without exercise. It doesn't really fit well with my mental health.
Tell me, have you fallen off your horse and broken something?
I've never fallen off my horse and broken anything, but I do fall off regularly.
I was
Sometimes I've fallen off.
There were two ladies talking about riding their horse, and they were going on and on about the horse, and now they'd run in the morning. And I said, have you ever broken something? Because everybody I've ever known who has a horse has broken something. And they both looked at me like, why are you asking me that? And they went, yeah, I broke an arm. She broke a leg. It was, hey ho. All right. Now, what cancer were you diagnosed with?
I've got ovarian cancer, endometrioid ovarian cancer.
Did they gave you a grade, which grade 3? Yeah.
Grade 3. Well, my surgeon said it was grade 3B, and then they upped it to grade 3C, which made me feel even worse.
And you got diagnosed a bit before we first met, didn't you?
I got diagnosed in May 2018, and you and I had a PP with you in September 2018, and I actually met you. I was lucky enough that you were doing your presentation at Bracknell in the October, and I met you for the first time. Me and my family come along that year, and we were lucky enough to meet you the following year.
Came back for a repeat, did you? Glutton for punishment. All right. So when you got your cancer, did they tell you a lot of details about it? Did they say you were high-grade serous? Did they say it was in the fallopian tubes? Presumably it was for endometrial ovarian. Did they tell you?
Well, what they said was, she said it was it actually gone as far as my they took my appendix out as well, and what should have been, I had debulking surgery, and what should have been a 2-hour surgery ended up being 6-hour surgery, because before I'd had the main surgery, they put the cameras in, and they decided that it hadn't spread to my bowel, because originally they'd had a bowel surgeon on standby, but they cancelled him, so they went ahead without it. However, when they obviously opened me up, it was all over everywhere, really. I mean, they took the omentum and the whole surrounding of my stomach, and then and I said my family was just waiting. No one comes and tells them, do they? They just sit and wait, and hour upon hour upon hour. And then but actually, as it turned out, when all the biopsies come back, all the stuff on my appendix and on my bowel was actually fibroids.
Yeah. In fact, some women can have an 8-hour or 10-hour surgery. So, I mean, I do sometimes wonder whether the oncologist knows what happens when you go down the corridor and has the surgery, because it can be huge. It can be really huge. So you had it pretty extensively then all over you. So it must have been fallopian tubes to start with.
I mean, it's really strange because since I was 15, I've always had bad periods. And so they put me on the pill to regulate it and calm them down. And all my life, it's never made any difference. But actually, that's the one thing I'm really sorry about, that I never ever said, can we have a look at, can we have a scan and have a look? Because then we'd have realised I had fibroids, and hopefully I would, well, I maybe would never have ended up in this state. But of course, by the time I got diagnosed, you know, I was 56, and it was too late.
What symptoms did you have?
It's really funny, isn't it? I've got really small pelvis, but all I had was a slight pain to the left side in my on my tummy, and I was peeing more, to be fair, but and I was a little bit more tired, but you know, we'd get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go and do the warrants. So you know, if you're getting up at 4 o'clock and you've got a really active life, then you're tired. But I mean, I didn't. As soon as I had it, I thought, right, I'll go to the doctors. Made an appointment, trotted off to my doctor, and I had a really lovely. And she was a locum. I'm so thankful for her. And she straight away said, "Can I examine you?" And I said, "Oh yes, please." And straight away she said to me, "I can feel a mass." And she said, "But it's soft, so I think it's fibroids." She said, "I'm going to go and get another doctor, okay?" Because she's obviously a baby doctor. They came back, and they just, and it's really funny. I laid on that bed, and I thought, oh, I'm dying. I didn't even realise. But then I thought, don't panic. Of course you're not. And then they sent me straight from there to the local hospital to have my bloods done. So again, I was still sort of a bit oblivious to it. I remember ringing my big sister and saying, "Oh, she's found a mass." But I wasn't stressed about it, which shows how stupid I was. And but my big sister obviously was. And so I went off and had my bloods, and I never knew anything about a CA125. No one talked about that. And then, I mean, so I think that was like on the Monday. We were going to a wedding on the Friday in Cornwall, and I, on the way there, I just rung up the doctors and said, "Can I have my results?" And they said, "Oh, they're not back." She said, "I'll ring in a minute." I rung an hour later. She said, "They're not back." And then I said, "Oh, don't worry, I'll have them on Monday." And within 5 minutes, a doctor had rung me, and I thought, "Oh, it's a bit strange." And she said, "Oh, your CA125 is slightly raised." She said, "We're going to send you for an ultrasound scan." And I still was oblivious. Okay, still wasn't, and I didn't have enough sense to say what was my CA125 and what was normal. Went to the wedding, got a little bit thought about it. Anyway, then I rang on the Monday and I said, "What is my CA125?" And it was 225. And you obviously know that normal is up to 35. So I thought, okay. On the Thursday, they sent me to the local hospital, and I had the ultrasound, you know, the internal one and the one on your tummy. And I went with my husband, but my big sister turned up because she obviously was really concerned. And they said, "Oh, she can't come in." I said, "Oh, she's my carer," but they still wouldn't let her in. And I suppose, anyway, she straight away, I could see that I was in trouble. I could see that there was something I could see on the scan. So I'm like, "What's that? What's that?" And the nurse said she did total avoidance. She was totally dismissive. She wouldn't say anything. But she said, "Are you seeing an oncologist?" And I said, "Well, they've booked me an appointment for tomorrow." But then she said, "Good luck." So I knew I was stuffed as soon as she said good luck.
It's a death.
So I think it would be fair to say that I walked in there, but I crawled out on my hands and knees, physically and mentally. So for me, it was life-changing. And I was very frightened. Sorry.
Mm.
And then the next day, we all went to the hospital, all of us, and we all waited in the waiting room. And then they called me in, and I said, "They're all coming in." She said, "They're not." I said, "They are." She said, No. I said, "Listen, if you think they're sitting in the waiting room while we hear life-changing news, because it doesn't just affect the person, does it? It's the whole family."
Yeah.
And so she said, "There's no seats." I said, "They'll stand." So we all went in, and that was the way we've done it, really, all the way through. And then she said, they don't talk about cancer, they talk about a growth, don't they? Really. And she obviously said, "You've got a growth." And then she said, we'll get you a CT scan within 2 weeks, and we're going to send you to the Churchill, because I was at the RBH then, because the RBH, the Churchill and the Swindon Hospital,
in Oxford,
they have all their meetings on a Monday, and then they decide, in Oxfordshire, and then they decide where you're best situated for your surgery. And then I literally got in the car, we were driving.
at the outset, when they're doing all these tests, did they test you and tell you you were high grade serous or low grade serous?
No, they didn't test at all for that at all.
All right. Did
So
they?
nothing at that moment. All she was talking about.
All right. Did they test for BRCA1 and BRCA2? Did they test to see if you had something?
We didn't do that.
No.
We didn't do that until we got under the Churchill. So they did. I have been tested. I'm not BRCA, and but they didn't do it until when I got transferred to the other hospital.
All right.
So I think our system at the moment is decide where you're best set.
What about estrogen?
No.
So they never test you for estrogen.
They've never tested.
Yeah, it's funny. All right,
no.
I'll say something now. It's very interesting. I know, 40% of my patients are in America and Canada, and straight away they test you for BRCA1, BRCA2, and they test you for estrogen. And why they do that? I mean, I've just had a lady, and she's 60%, 68% estrogen, I think, positive. And why they do that is obviously, 80% breast cancer, women are estrogen positive. Endometrial, it's about 80% again are estrogen positive, but ovarian, it's about 65%. So the odds are you're estrogen positive. And it's really important. I mean, some oncologists in Britain say, oh, don't worry about that, because you ask further down the line and they haven't still got a sample of tissue. But it is really important. Rosie Daniel, who was at the Bristol Cancer Centre years and years ago, she said to me, and I agreed with her, she said, if you're estrogen positive, estrogen's like pouring petrol on the fire of cancer. You need to know, and you need to shut it down. And I remember giving you a little program for anti-estrogen in our PP. I checked. I did give you one. So, I mean, it's quite important. Mm-hmm. So all these things. So I'm glad you're not BRCA1, BRCA2, although I have to say your survival is usually longer if you've got an inherited mutation, because they've got more drugs for it. But what did they actually tell you about your cancer? Did they say it's ovarian or it's fallopian tube, or did they just look in there and say it's everywhere?
Yeah, I mean, it was in both my fallopian tubes, and my ovaries. It was in my, obviously I had a radical hysterectomy. It was in my on my obviously when they after the surgery, it was in my cervix. So it was pretty widespread. I mean, I was a bit.
And they only classed you as grade 3, stage 3. I mean, this sounds like stage 4 to me, definitely.
But they only did grade me as stage 3.
Yeah, perhaps it's because it's not in the organs. Perhaps it's not in the liver or not in the lungs. Did they talk to you well at that time? How soon was it before they said, we're going to treat you like this?
Well, from there, I mean, on the way from literally leaving the hospital within 10 minutes, I had a phone call to say I was having a CT scan on the Monday. So I knew again I was in even more trouble. I had the CT scan on the Monday. And then on the Wednesday, I went to my doctor's where we all piled in. And she just said, right, okay, she's doing all mamby-pambying. And I said to her, get on with it. I don't do mamby-pambying. We know we've got cancer. How bad is it? And she said, and then I know. And then she said, oh no, it's not in any of your organs, it's contained. So we thought, okay, good news. And then I suppose the surprise was that I got referred to the Churchill and I met my lovely oncologist surgeon, who is totally adorable and I have so much respect for, and who has saved my life. And he's Mr. Alazam, is just totally adorable. And I suppose the shock is that I was there. So I was there pretty much in May, and I thought that I'd have surgery quite quickly. But they were talking like surgery in 3 months, which is, I suppose, it's down to the way. And of course, I'm panicking and thinking, get it out. And of course, they're saying, oh no, it's going to be this long and this long. So that I think if you're never in the system, I don't think you understand how slow it is until you're in the system.
They use the 3 months to give you chemo or anything like that?
No, I was never going to have chemo until afterwards. That's what they said. What they then did, they rung me and they decided to have me in, and they did the where they put the camera in one at the top, one at the bottom, and they talked about having biopsies, and I wasn't keen about the biopsies because I was frightened that if they took a biopsy, they would then spread the cancer. That was my really worry. And obviously I was still, I was like a rabbit in the headlights. I still didn't, I was still in shock really. So, but I didn't take any biopsies. But what they did do, they then said, it's not on your bowel, so we won't need the surgeon to do obviously a colostomy. I mean, what they did do is 2 days after the surgery, I had they'd given me an infection from the surgery. I had pus coming out everywhere, and in actual, out of all my scars, those 2 little scars are scarred the worst. Not that I care about the scars, but they're the worst scars because of the infection. But then I went back and saw my surgeon. And then we spoke about when I was have the operation, and then obviously I'd have the chemo afterwards. And my surgery was booked for like the 16th of July. And on the 5th of July, I was still working. On the 5th of July, I had a phone call at 11 o'clock to say, just checking that you're okay for your surgery tomorrow. And I said, no, my surgery's on the 16th. And they'd brought it forward and nobody had informed me.
Yeah. Okay. So you had the surgery. When did you get the infection? After the surgery or before, when they did some of the tests?
After the first surgery.
All right.
I mean, I had
the first surgery.
Yeah.
You had 2 surgeries, did you? Then you had several surgeries.
So I had the first one, which was the one with the cameras.
Okay.
Then I had the debulking surgery.
Okay,
I had my big surgery on the 5th of July.
So you had your infection between the 2, which is what I've thought. Yes, that's what I was trying to say. So did they at any point explain to you the causes of this cancer or what the infection was?
They said that my cancer was from that I had obviously had fibroids, and that had obviously changed and become cancerous.
But they didn't tell you how mystically your fibroids have become cancer.
Nope.
And when you got your infection, what was it, a UTI, or was it locally there?
No, it was actually, it was pus dripping out of my breast on the side of my surgery. So it was a Sunday when we saw it. I went up again, I was terrified, went up to the local out of hours hospital, and straight away she said, you've got an infection. I mean, that frightened me even more. She obviously put me on antibiotics then.
Okay, so what at this point, so when they first talked to you about your CA125 above 200, what was it now? Did they tell you what it was now after your surgery?
What today? After my surgery?
Yeah. They tell you what
I can't remember. I mean, I know what it is today. Today it's 6.
We'll come to what it is today. We'll surprise everybody. Okay. It was 200 and something. Then you had the surgery, but you don't know what it was then. Okay.
So after my surgery and my chemo, I know what it was then. It went down to 12.
Okay. We'll come back to it. Now, let me just come in about this. We do know what the causes of ovarian cancer are. There is a link to dairy. I'm not saying it's a cause, there is a link. Women who drink more than a cupful of milk a day, I think it's a cup and a half of milk a day, are more likely, about 30% more likely to get ovarian. I'm not saying it's a cause, I'm just saying it seems to be a risk factor. Being overweight is a risk factor. I don't think you were. But the big factor is infection. So, and I'm just going to do a little bit on this. What they thought ages ago, that your ovaries and your fallopian tubes were pristinely clean because babies went through there, obviously. And then about 10 years ago, part of the Human Microbiome Project, they showed a number of things. So believe it or not, if you've had herpes at any point, you've got a higher risk. If you've had chlamydia and you've got chlamydia antibodies in you, you've got a higher risk. The big one is E. coli. This is why I was pushing you on the infection, because a lot of people who get UTIs or whatever, it's E. coli. And so all you have to do to get E. coli is go and get food poisoning, for example. So you go, if you if you go and have a meal out and you get food poisoning, we know that that gives you 2 to 3 trillion of the bad guy out of 90 trillion bacteria in your gut. And the 2 to 3 trillion can knock out good guys, some of which look after E. coli. And so you're far more likely over the next 12, 10, 15 years to actually have a growth of E. coli in your body, far more likely to get things like ovarian, breast, prostate cancer, so on. So that can be a big player. And as I said, we've got other research now. The Mayo Clinic have just done a big study, and they've shown just women who have hysterectomies, whether they have cancer with the hysterectomy or not, have got, 4 or 5 major pathogenic families, bad guys, and have lost the volume of good guys. Because everybody who gets cancer, I think I've done this with you, they lose the volume of good guys and their bad guys come out to play. By losing the good guys, also your immune system comes down. So it's all connected. So that is a big cause of ovarian, and we go out of our way to fix that. Okay, so as you know, we went out of our way. So that's for everybody's knowledge that this is a major thing. So we're not too sure about the 125 at this point. So they gave you surgery, and then they gave you chemo.
Yeah.
And what was the chemo? The
They did, but
carboplatin and Taxol.
I had the carboplatin, yeah, and I had 6 rounds, and I had it every 3 weeks.
Okay.
I mean, I'd be in that ward for 10 hours because I'd have my bloods done on the Wednesday. My chemo was always a Friday. I'd get to the ward and my neutrophils would be 0.9. Well, I can't have chemo at that. So they'd run them again, and then my neutrophils would be 1. And because I was so fit and healthy, she let me have chemo as long as my neutrophils are 1. And normally it has to be 1.5, doesn't it?
Yeah. Now, I know I gave you the program, 10 ways to make your chemo work better and reduce your side effects. And we do get people. How were you on the chemo? This is not a loaded question. You can say whatever you want. How were you on the chemo? Because I get people who write to me and say, I'm sailing through the chemo. Was it good or was it bad?
Well, before that, let me just say one thing. I started my chemo on the 31st of August, and that's when I started. But prior to that, I'd been to see her and the oncologist, and out of the blue, we weren't expecting it. At that point, she told me I had 3 to 5 years to live, and that I needed to just enjoy my life and make the most of it, because there was no way I was going to last any longer than that. So she totally destroyed all of our mental health, totally. When I then was lucky enough to meet you, the first thing you said was, let's prove them wrong. And you were the first bit of hope that came into my life. And that made such a difference to all of us. So what I did your
I remember you saying you've been progressive, it been almost cut down to 18 months. You kept saying things like, but you do realize you're going to die in 18 months or something like this. Wasn't that a big issue for you?
All the way through, every time I see my oncologist, and I'll tell you more about it in the way, she always says, you've got a life-shortening disease and there's nothing you can do about it. And but I'll say the bit later when we get to the further story. So I had my PP with you, and I stuck to it religiously. I drove them all mad, my family, because obviously I went, that's what we've got to do. But straight away, I went to the MS Centre, and I'm still there now, 5.5 years later. And in fact, I'm now a helper, and I help run the chamber 1 day a week. And the Sue at the chamber has been absolutely fabulous, and they was always accommodate me. So you said, first of all, I went for 2 weeks every day. And then throughout my chemo, I went religiously twice a week. And I've always now gone, once a week. So that was the first thing I did. I took up yoga, which I didn't do then. And I obviously ate my rainbow diet. I had all my supplements. I ate loads of raw ginger, all the things that I still do. Loads and loads. Never drunk green tea before, drunk green tea all the time. But I saw a cranial osteopath, my lovely, lovely Kelly, who's my lifesaver. And I went at acupuncture. So all the stuff that you told me to do, I did religiously. I exercised. So I'd be on the chemo ward for 10 hours. The next day, I'd go and ride my horse, and I'd go walking. And also, I mean, I got paid for being off sick when I was a police officer, but I still went in every other day, 4 hours a week, even though, and I went because for my mental health, because they made me laugh, and it was nice to feel normal, because you don't feel normal, do you? You're this person that's got cancer, and your whole identity is just gone. So other than having no hair and no eyebrows and being a little bit tired, I sailed through chemo. And I'd say I'd be on that ward. I'd be first on the ward, 8 o'clock in the morning. And sometimes I'd still be on there at 8 o'clock at night, waiting for them. They wait to go home, because again, they'd have to rerun my bloods. And my neutrophils never ever went higher than 1.5 through the whole of my chemo. My neutrophils are only 2.1 now. I always run a slight anemia, but I'm fit and healthy, you know. I mean, and all of that was because the chamber and all the stuff that you told me to do, which I did. It made all the difference. I mean, my friend's having chemo, and she said, you made it look easy. And I said, just because I made it look easy, it doesn't mean it was. But, you know, I just did all the stuff you said, and it does make such a difference.
So did you give up things like dairy?
Yeah, I didn't eat the dairy. You said no dairy. I wasn't really a big. I didn't drink tea anyway, but I did used to have my cereal. But yeah, but you did say I could have a little bit of unpasteurized cheese once a week.
Absolutely, unpasteurized cheese. You got, especially after chemo, we've got research. It's about women with breast cancer. It said women with breast cancer have all their conventional treatments, and actually do then rebuild their gut, survive significantly longer than women who don't. I mean, it's obvious, really. It's obvious, because you get yourself back to norm, back to normality in your gut. And if you fix your gut, you fix your body. That's what it's all about. And I always rebuild people gut outwards. What about your gut rebuild? Did you do all the oregano oils and then go on to the raw cheese and things like that?
I do. I still take my oregano oil morning and night. Okay, except for when I'm doing my artemisinin, which I'll do for 10 days on, probably every 6 weeks. I did the para-free, 25 days on, 5 days off, 25 days on, 3 in the morning, 3 in the evening. And I still do that every March. So every year I've done that. And then I listened to Dr. Kenyon when you did your chat with him at the Dove Clinic. And luckily he's only 45 minutes from me. And then after I finished my chemo, I went there and I had the 10 sessions having the gut flora replacement, and they're lovely at the clinic. And I did that, and then I did that for the first time, and I said that, and that was what I did. I eat the kimchi, I eat the sauerkraut every morning religiously. It doesn't matter where I am in the world. I have my hot water with lemon and my apple cider vinegar with mother. That's the first way I start my day every day.
Too hot. Water shouldn't be too hot, because you can kill the bugs. You should have sort of lukewarm. Okay, but that's the right thing to do. That's the right. I mean, basically, people don't get this. I've done some research in America, got involved in the research in America, and people who had 2 drugs for 4 rounds and then a couple of weeks of antibiotics, that's all, less than you had. 1 year later, they only had 27% of their microbiomes left. Right, so they could have fixed it, but they didn't. People don't. And so that's what the normal person is like. But you will be at about the 85% mark. So when you've got a normal microbiome, you get normal white cells, you know, the immune white cells, and you basically get fitter and weller, if that's a word, faster. That's what gut rebuilds are all about. And yet, you know, I still get doctors laughing about it. Now, okay, let's talk about CA125. For the audience's understanding, what doctors do, they'll get people with ovarian up to 2,000. I've got a lady at 2,200. She's just come to me. I get other women at 1,500 CA125. And the normal process is to give you carboplatin and Taxol, then give you the surgery, and then give you the carboplatin Taxol again. And after all that, they're looking for a figure of about 15. And the reason they're looking for 15 is you're well below their two markers. Their markers are 30 and 35. At 30, they're going to start being concerned about you. And at 35, they're going to do something. That's basically a rule of thumb. It can be different by different hospitals. So they're trying to get you down to about 15. So talk to us. What happened? You had your surgery and then you had your chemo. Where were you after that?
So for the next 3 years, my CA125 stayed really no more than 12, and mine was as down as low as 5. Okay, so I had 4 monthly checks with my, and I'd see alternative. I see my oncologist one time, and then I'd see my oncologist surgeon the next time, and then they were actually talking about signing me off and putting me on 6 monthly, but I said no. I said, I'm not being 6 monthly. You're telling me I'm dying. I said, my mental health won't cope with having blood tests every 6 months. I said, no. I said, you're not.
Yeah. No, I think
so
you're
you're
right.
not signing me off.
I think
so
you're right.
I thought, you're monitoring me forever, you know, not having that. So so that was all fine. And I said I was fine. I was fit and healthy. I went skiing. You know, I mean, my hair's never grown back, but it is what it is. And I've lost 50% hearing. I've got hearing aids from the carboplatin. But do you know what? On the scale of things, that's the least of my worries.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
and then
go on. You carry.
Then I got tricked. It was just before my 60th birthday, so in the May, and then she said, I had a baby on college. She was nice, but they'd done a CT scan, and they said, oh, my CA125 had gone up to about 17, and then they did a CT scan. When I went to see her, I suppose I mean, she shows again, I wasn't on it. She said, oh, you've got a, and she called it a cyst, right? So I said, oh, okay, a cyst. She said, what we'll do is we'll run you another scan in 2 months. Okay. So I sort of didn't cotton on. So 2 months later, I went back when I had another scan, and then she said, oh, it's grown. And she said it's a, it's a met of your ovarian cancer. And I was a bit, well, you never said that last time. And of course, so they tricked me, really. I wasn't on it. And that was where I should have been sharper, because if I had been, and then she said, oh, right, this is what we're going to do. It's 3.5 now. Or she said, we're going to wait 3 months, and then we're going to do another scan, and then we're going to operate. We'll open you up and we'll do liver surgery.
All right, hang on. So all right, you just said the magic word. So this started off with them identifying a cyst on your liver.
Yep.
And it was 3.5 centimeters or 3.5 millimeters. Was it tiny or this big?
It was 2.5 centimeters to start with, but then it had grown in the 2 months. So it had grown a centimeter in the 2 months. And they were saying they wanted to let it grow till it was 5 centimeters before they would operate.
And what were they talking about? Surgery on your liver? And cutting
open stomach surgery again. So a liver surgeon and my oncologist surgeon. So it went open abdominal surgery again.
Okay. And then you came to me again.
Then I came to you, and you said, oh, you need ablation and you need Professor Lean. And then and I said, oh, I've never heard of it. So I then got in touch with Professor Lean. He was absolutely amazing, and his lovely secretary. And that he said, okay, I need, they got my CT scans from the hospital. They did a scan transfer. He said, okay. He said, from what I can see, I can ablate your tumour. And he said, but we need a PET scan. Okay. And I told my oncologist I want to have ablation. And I asked if I could have a PET scan. And her exact words were, we won't even pay for a blood test for you. You're on your own. She said, if you want a PET scan, you will have to go and pay for one. She wouldn't flatly refuse to give me one. And she also said that she actually inferred that I wouldn't actually carry on treating me. Okay. And for someone that, you're always frightened when you're in this situation. Anyway, let
me just cut in for everybody's sake. Luckily, I help people in America and Canada. Ablation is quite common practice. in America and Canada. And three years ago in Britain, it was not common practice. So I had a guy with colorectal cancer, and he had not tumors on his lungs, but nodules. And in the end, he had 27. And first of all, he started off telling me he was dead. And I said, no, you're not. You've got nodules. Go and have ablation. And Kingston and the Royal Marsden did not do ablation 4 years ago. Unbelievable. And so he went and found someone in London who ablated 27 nodules, which he'd been told were tumors, and they weren't. And, you know, I know a lot about ablation. I've followed ablation now for 15 years, and we're going to talk about the nanoknife. You know, it's all been on the website for 12, 15 years. This is not revolutionary technology, but it is for Britain somehow. I don't know why. I don't know why. Ablation is perfectly normal. Go.
Well, she actually said, and her words were that I was going to die, and that I was wasting my money, and that I should have a good holiday. My sister wanted me to make a complaint. They were really upset. I mean, she destroyed me again.
Well, I think the trouble is, if you cut across what their wisdom says, it's not wisdom. They've got a play sheet. They've got a list of, they've got their Radio 1 disc jockeys. They've got a playlist. And, you know, you do this, you do the carboplatin and Taxol. If it comes back, you do this. And you have surgery and lose a chunk of your liver. They've got this playlist. And if you say, well, hang on, can I go outside the playlist? Can I go and do this, please? And it's not on the repertoire. It's the same system as, you know, can I take vitamin D and supplements? And oh, no, you can't. You know, it's outside their knowledge bank or repertoire. More, let's be nice and say it's outside the repertoire. And so the second you say that, we do get it in Britain. I get patients whose oncologist has a hissy fit. And that's all I can say. No, if you go and do that, we're not treating you anymore. So, I mean, I'm surprised. I mean, they swear a Hippocratic oath, don't they? You know, we will treat you and we will not do you any harm and we'll look after you and so on. But to have a hissy fit is terrible, really.
Well, I then had to go to my GP to get her to do a referral so I could go and pay, because I didn't want to pay to go to the clinic in London because it's much more expensive for the PET scan. And I went to Coburg in Gloucestershire and I had paid £1,200 and I had a PET scan. The good thing was I had a PET scan on the Friday, and on the Wednesday it went straight through to up to the clinic. And on the Wednesday, Professor Lee phoned me and said, I've got your PET scan. And he said, you've got 2 tumours on your liver. So I thought, oh, blow me down, right? And then he said, but there's no spread anywhere else, Sandra. So I'd been at work and I was driving home and I cried and I said to him, can I ring you when I get home? So I just cried all the way home with relief. Okay. Anyway, then on the Friday of that week when I'd had my results, my hospital then rung. So I think what they must have done was taken my case back to the Monday morning meeting, and they must have said to them, you should have given her a PET scan, because they run the National Health to say to me, you need to come in for a PET scan. And I said, had one last week, I've sent all the images through to you. And she said, no, you can't have. I said, I have. So you see, they suddenly backtracked. It was too late. I'd already paid and had my PET scan, and it was up, and my surgery was booked in. I then went to see my lovely oncologist surgeon, and I was having my surgery on the Tuesday, and I went to see him I had an appointment with him on the Friday, and I said to him I was having it, and he was very skeptical, but he did say, and what he did say was, you know, you aren't going to get chemo, don't you, because of this, but I'm going to fight for you, Sandra. But he was lovely, but he was obviously, he said, I've never met anybody, I've never dealt with anyone with ovarian cancer that's had ablation. So I said, well, I'll be your first then, won't I? I can be your pioneer. And he gave me a big hug and he made me feel better. But I was nervous because everyone's telling me, okay, that I'm not doing the right thing, and that they're going to, and that the NHS, that they're going to disown me and they're not going to treat me. And I thought, you know, I'll deal with that once I've done this. If I have to make a complaint, not that I wanted to, but I will. So I went up to London and I had my ablation, and it was obviously you're unconscious. It's all done in the CT scanner, and it was a 1-hour operation. And the next day I was released, and I went home in the afternoon and I rode my horse. 1 day recovery compared to 4 months. It's a no-brainer.
Right, right. Let's just explain to the people what ablation is. They give you a little cut, they probably over the top of the liver. They come at you with a tiny little filament pen, and they basically, if it's radio frequency, just touch the tumors with great heat, I think 40 degrees, and you could say cauterize them. Some people do. They just kill them basically with heat. Or that pen can be hollow and it can be cryoablation, and it can be minus 40 degrees. So that is ablation, radio frequency ablation or cryoablation. And it's all over in less than an hour, isn't it?
Yeah. And as I said, I went home. I mean, I wished I was rich so that I could stay being his patient, because he's so lovely. And they actually, you go back in the scanner the next morning to check that there's no bleed and that everything's as it should be. And he was lovely, the chap. And he said that they called Professor Lean the doctor's doctor, and all the doctors that are poorly come from all over the world to be treated by him. And I could see exactly why.
This is Professor Edward Lean.
I mean, it cost £12,000.
Yes,
yeah.
That's the problem. So, I mean,
what's £12,000?
Shame. Well, it's such a shame, right? This is Professor Edward Lean. He's at Hammersmith, UCH, isn't it? That's right, isn't it?
He's at Princess Grace.
Princess Grace.
He's at the Princess Grace.
Okay. Now, Edward Lean does ablation. He's head of radiology. One should say he's head of radiology. He's not some quack in a cupboard doing something different. He's head of radiology. I think it's at Hammersmith, or perhaps it's Princess Grace now. But that's his background. And so he's doing ablation because he knows how to do it and so on. And what is so sad, if the NHS added up how much it would cost to do your surgery and keep you in hospital for a couple of weeks and feed you and everything else, it would probably be just the same price as you going for ablation.
And the sad thing is that at the John Radcliffe, we've got a professor that does ablation, a top professor that does ablation. But because I've got ovarian cancer and I don't have, my primary isn't liver cancer, I don't fall into his remit. So, because we questioned that.
Crazy.
But I'll come back to that at the end.
Crazy. Okay, so what happened now? Are we in the last chapter of your saga, or?
No, not. We've got a bit more to go on. So anyway, because I'm going in it. So then I went. Like, the only thing I'll say is, because I obviously didn't go back to him for a follow-up because obviously it's expensive. He did say, you need to have scan every 3 months, and he said, Sandra, if you were my patient, I would have put you on chemo, because you can have chemo and have an ablation at the same time. It's not like having chemo and surgery. And he said, you need to have chemo. So I then went to see my oncologist in the October. My husband was with me. I didn't even tell him what I was going to say. I had my letter in my bag, and I said, she said, you had the ablation, and I said, oh yeah, and I said, I'd like chemo, please, and she said, no, you can't have chemo. I said, why not? She said, got no tumor to show what sort of cancer, what sort of cancer it is. So I said, well, you and me know, you and I both know it's a met of my ovarian cancer. So she said, no, we don't. But she had a letter where she'd written to my doctor and to me, telling me before that it was a Met. So I said, well, it says in here it's a Met. So she said, well, have your chemo then. So I did. So I didn't want chemo. Who wants chemo? Anyway, but I was doing what was best for me. Okay. Yeah. So this time I only had to have 4 rounds of chemo. And this time I had carboplatin, and I had a different one. I had, it's the Red Devil. I had that one. What's it? What do you think? What it is?
Don't look at me.
It's written here. Yeah, it's CAELY to X. So anyway,
I think that's paclitaxel in what you call it, liposomal form.
And the good thing, I was only on the chemo ward 4 hours and didn't lose my hair this time. Went home, rode my horse in the afternoon.
Again, so, I think your horse is part of your treatment program. Do you realize this? I think your horse has played a big part. Horses and dogs are energy givers, right? Cats are energy takers, for example. So horses are really good for you. They give you energy.
Well, I mean, when she rang me one day, my oncologist, she's lovely. It's just we don't agree. That's the problem. She actually called me riding my horse when I answered the phone, and she told me I couldn't ride while I was having chemo. She said, you're riding that horse. I said, I am. she said, I told you not to ride. I said, I think you meant don't fall off. So I just decided to interpret it a different way. Anyway, and then when I finished my chemo, the only thing that I'd say is that when we had the scan, she did let me have scans every 3 months, which is what a CT scan. The tumour had actually grown to 6.5 centimetres. But that's because when they put it in, yeah, one of the ones that were ablated. And when I messaged Professor Lean, he said, what happens? He said, it's the inflammation. But then it went back and it disappeared. So that was something I wasn't expecting.
So it grew to 6.5. They thought it was a tumour. Lean said it's not a tumour, it's just the inflammation there. So it wasn't, so he didn't have to treat you on that?
No, and I said he asked for the scans. He sent for the scans again, and he checked it, and he did that for me free. So that was nice of him, wasn't it?
That's it. I can't say a lot about this, but that's exactly what happened to he's now my friend, to his wife. And Lean treated the lady, and the Royal Marsden kept saying, this is rubbish, this is rubbish. And Lean kept saying, no, it's worked. And the Royal Marsden wouldn't have it that it worked. So exactly what you're talking about. So this rings very true to me. Yeah, you can. So
anyway, my
inflammation. Yes, it can. So
my CA1
done and dusted. No more. It's all over. Finished.
No, no, don't be silly. So then my CA125 went down to 5, and then I went back to the Dove Clinic, and I paid again. And because obviously the chemo ruins your gut, and that's what keeps you well. So I went back to the Dove Clinic, and I paid again. I spend all my money trying to stay well, and it's working. And I only had 7 this time, because in between my treatments, Dr. Kenyon overnight retired with ill health. So that and you know the Dove Clinic closed.
Yeah.
But what we'll say is,
he and I did the show. And it was quite interesting because I'd billed him as talking about fecal transplants, and he'd rung me about 3 or 4 years before. I said, what comes next? I said, fecal transplants. And 1 minute before we went on air, I kid you not, Julian sort of said to me, I don't do fecal transplants anymore. So I said, really? Why not? And he said, because they cost too much. They're like nearly 8 grand or something. He said, don't always work, and they're very messy. So I said, what do you do, Julian? He said, I give people trillions of lactobacillus, trillions of bifidobacteria, and high-dose butyrate. I said, that's what I've been doing for 12 years. I give people raw cheese. That's trillions of lactobacillus and trillions of bifidobacteria, and I use high-dose butyrate. Exactly the same protocol I've been using for 12 years now. So
what I will say is that because I didn't complete the 10 sessions, they returned all of my money, even though I'd had 7 sessions. So, you know, that was very nice of them.
Yeah, nice guys, nice people at the Dove. Nice people at the Dove. So you rebuilt your gut. You had CA125, rebuilt gut. Then what happened?
Well, then in January of this year, even though I'm really well still, after my chemo, I then asked my oncologist if I could go on immunotherapy, because you've talked about immunotherapy. And because I didn't have, because originally she said I could go on the Icon 9 trial, but again, of course, because I didn't have a tumour, because I'd had ablation, she wouldn't let me. But that was fine. I didn't want to go on the Icon 9 trial because people were having blood transfusions every month. So I looked it all up. So she actually agreed that I could go on rucaparib.
So you went on a PARP?
Yeah, I'm on a PARP. Yeah, that's what I'm on. And that was 12 mils, 12 milligrams.
Hang on. You're on a PARP, but you don't have BRCA1 or BRCA2?
No.
So whose idea was the PARP, theirs or yours?
Well, I asked her what I could go on, and she said I could go on that one. I wanted to go on Neuroparib, but she said I wasn't suitable for that one. Okay.
So you're on a PARP, even though you're not BRCA1 and 2. Okay, and keep going.
So that's fine. 1200 mils twice, so split over 600. And then I have blood tests every 4 weeks, which is obviously full blood, liver count, and my CA125. So that suits me. And then I have a phone call from the oncologist nurse, who's lovely. But I felt really rough. By sort of September, I could bear, I mean, I made myself still ride my horse, walk my dog, but could barely put one foot in front of the other. And then got my bloods back, and my hemoglobin was 70. So she said, you got to come in for a medium blood transfusion. Went in, my hemoglobin literally overnight had gone down to 62. She did say, you managing to ride your horse and go to work? I said, yeah. And she said, how have you managed it? I said, look, I thought I was dying, but I'm doing it on my terms and not yours. So anyway, I had a double blood transfusion, and we dropped the dosage down to 1,000 mils. And I have to say, it's been on 1,000 mils since last October, and it's like I'm not even on it. I don't even know that I'm on
1,000 mils of the PARP.
Of the PARP, yes. So I have 500 in the morning, 500 in the evening.
All right, let me just tell everybody about PARP inhibitors. PARP inhibitors are usually used for people who've got BRCA1 or BRCA2 or PALB2 and inherited mutations. And so typically I use ovarian cancer, triple negative, some breast cancers. And PARPs are really quite good because they're made to treat cancers where you've got one strand working and not the other one. Just for people listening, I had a really weird week where I helped someone in New Zealand and I helped someone in Australia. And in both cases, they were being put on a PARP and they were told categorically, do not touch supplements while you're on a PARP. So as always, I thought about time I did some research on PARPs. And I looked at basically all the things I use, about 14 supplements and the rainbow diet and everything else. And guess what? Berberine, turmeric, hinokiol, things like that that I use are PARPs. That's what they do. They actually work the same way as a PARP inhibitor. And would you believe polyphenols, which are, of course, are the root of the rainbow diet. Polyphenols protect you and correct you. Polyphenols are PARPs. So everything I do makes PARPs work even better than they're supposed to. So I've written a big article. It's got, I think, 14.
I mean, I've carried on taking.
Yeah, it's got about 14 references in it. So what we do actually in a funny way is we do give everybody PARPs. So it's quite, I find it quite interesting. I'm looking at other things at the moment about all this. So hey ho. So is that it? Is that it? Didn't you have another oncologist?
No, of course.
Oh, okay. Go on.
No. So I've still got. So I did have two oncologists, but they've both been negative for a lot about my extra stuff. But I have had, when I ever had the baby oncologists, they're lovely, and they're actually, oh gosh, you do all that. When I went in the chamber and I said, because I had to get them to stamp my form, and I said, oh, I'm going in the hyperbaric chamber, and she said, why would you? And I just said, why wouldn't you? And funny enough, when I said to Professor Lee, no, I'm going in the chamber on 2 days' time, and he said, what a good idea. So it just shows the difference, really. But so then obviously so in the January, my CA125 started rising from 6, okay? And I said, look, there's a problem. It went up from 6 to, I don't know, 10 and then to 12. So my oncologist let me have a CT scan, which came back and showed it was shown clear. So then my CA125 went up the next month. So then she let me have an MRI liver scan. So it showed the old scar, the scars from the original ablation, but it did not show any new tumours. So at that point, I said, can I have a PET scan? And she said, well, we won't do one yet. She said, but we will do one in the next couple of months. She said, it's fine. But my CA125 then got to 17, okay? And I know that I don't care that they say that 35 is the cutoff. For me, 17, I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
My CA125 is very sensitive to any cancers going on in my body. Okay. So I then asked, so I saw her and she said we can have the PET scan and such and such. So I had the PET scan in the May, and I went to see her and sat there, and she did say, she said, obviously your CA125, she had it all mapped, and she said your CA125 is now up to, by this time it was up to 33, okay? And obviously, she said it's still within the range. She said, but I agree with you, Sandra. For you, that's not within the range. There's obviously oh, she said that before she agreed to the PET scan. She said it's clearly there's something going on. So we had the PET scan, and she sat and she said, okay, she said you've got a 2.5 tumor on your liver. You've got she said it's in the same area. It could be the same tumor. She said, but you've obviously got a tumor. And I sat there thinking, I'm sitting there thinking, thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God, I'm going to have ablation. And she said, I know, I didn't voice that though, I'm not that brave. And so she said, right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do another PET scan in October. And she said, and then it'll be whatever it is by then, and then we'll operate in November. Oh, I forgot, in between all this, once I started my immunotherapy last year, I had a twisted gut. So I actually had to have a massive operation I was in hospital for a week, where they had to open my stomach up and obviously do all that, which if I'd had a liver surgery, I only would have been 4 months prior to that. My stomach would have been I don't think it would have recovered. I'd have had 3 surgeries in a very short period. So I was really glad. So so obviously I didn't tell her I was going to have the ablation. I just said, thank you. Okay. I got out of there. I emailed the secretary I emailed Professor Lean's secretary. They got my scans the same day, and I spoke to him the next day. And the following week, I went up to Princess Grace Hospital and had the ablation again.
It's a shame. Don't you think it's a shame that the Churchill, having seen the effects of ablation on you and how well it worked, and having someone who does ablation but maybe not an ovarian, didn't try it? I'm just being open-minded.
Yeah, it is. I mean,
outside
what she did say that day was, she said, when she said you've got a tumor on your liver, she did say, told you it wouldn't work. She said, I told you you'd be wasting your money. Well, I sat there and I actually thought, I've paid £12,000, well, 13 with having to pay for the PET scan. And I thought, I've had 2 really good years of doing everything that I want. I'm with my family and all the people I love. I don't know anyone, if they could afford it, that wouldn't pay £13,000 for that. So I don't think it was a waste.
So
I've never felt it was a waste.
Between Lean's first ablation on you and now was 2 years.
Yeah, so well, 22 months. But I mean, still, I mean, I said, and I listen, for all these years, I've never been ill. I've never had pain. I've always been fit and healthy. I've always, apart from having to recover from my surgeries, and it hasn't stopped me walking, I've still carried on as normal. So then I went the ablation. I had a little bit more of a complication in the ablation this time, because the following morning after my surgery, when I went back down for my scan, I'd had a slight bleed. So he made me stay in. I had to stay in for another half day, and I had to go back in the scanner, and then it was fine. So this time I wasn't allowed to ride the horse for a week.
Oh no. Oh no, is the horse all right? Is the horse coping without you?
It was fine. But he did say, and I mean it, Sandra, and I said, I know, it's fine.
Yeah. So now you had a phone call. You told me a story, and you said about being one of my successes. No?
I did. So what happened then is that, obviously, listen, I still didn't admit to having the ablation. Professor Lean had to write to my oncologist, okay? And then she arranged for me to have a phone consultation. I got called in early. So I thought, right, I'm now going to say, I don't want to be with you anymore. I'm not happy. You'll keep ruining my mental health. And blow me down, a lovely baby oncologist phoned me. It was absolutely lovely. And she said, I've had to check your CA. She said, oh, you've had ablation. I said, I know. She said, I've had to check your CA125 3 times. I said, what is it? So remember, it was 33. She said, it's gone down to 12. So I said to her, oh, ablation clearly works. And she said something that no one else would say. She said, it clearly does work, Sandra. And I said, instead of you guys telling me I'm dying every time I see you, and that I've got a life-shortening disease, I'm ruining my mental health. I said, I'm one of your successes. And she said, yes, you are. And I did say, can I have you every time, please?
Okay. So where
Then
are you now in all this? What have you
we
learned?
well, no, it gets better because the oncologist nurse rang me last week and she said, I haven't spoke to her for 4 months. She said, oh, your bloods are good. So I said, what are they? She said, oh, they're just good. I said, what's my CA125? She said, 6. I went, yes. I said, oh, God. I said, could you please make sure you tell my oncologist what my CA125 is? And can you tell her that ablation clearly works? So she laughed. And then tomorrow I've got they've agreed because they want me to have the original PET scan, but I've said no. I'm having a CT scan tomorrow, which is what Professor Ling says you have to have every 3 months for the 12 months following your ablation. And then I'm having an MRI. The baby oncologist, she said I could have an MRI liver scan as well, just to check. So that's brilliant. And I'm still taking my PARP, which I was dubious about it because I wasn't sure if it was working, given that I'd had another met come on my liver. But me and you spoke about it, and I'm happy that I'm doing the right thing at the moment.
So, in summary, you had massive surgery, you had chemo, you've had people trying to put the mockers on you all the time in your mental health area. You've actually gone on to do PARPs. And around the outside, you've done everything from riding the horse to giving up dairy to supplements to hyperbaric oxygen to rebuilding your gut every time you've gone anywhere near chemotherapy. And here you are 5 years and 4 months on from diagnosis, 5 years, 5 months on.
Yeah, nearly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With a CA125 of 5, 6.
6.
So do you think you're a good example of integrated medicine? I do. I think you've done a bit of everything. You?
I have. What I would say is I forgot to mention I take me 5 apricot kernels every day. I take me 75ml covered aspirin 4 times a week. I take all of my supplements, and the berberine, which is the one that my oncologist, when I was having my chemo and everything else, said no. But I would never give my berberine up. Obviously, I have prior to having my scan tomorrow for 4 days, and I did the fasting before chemo, obviously, and after chemo I did all that. I do the intermittent fasting now, where I eat in the 12 hours and eat in the 8 hours and do that.
I'm restricted.
I do all the stuff that you told me to do. I don't use any chemical products for I stopped any chemicals for anything in the house and anything for myself. I'm very particular. And I'm fit and healthy. Sometimes at 4 o'clock in the morning, I wake up and I'm still frightened. Okay. And those words still go in my head that she said that I'm going to die. And I know I'm past that, but it's really hard to get out of your head when they've said it, because it ruins your mental health. And it doesn't matter how strong you are. I don't want to die. I don't want to leave my friends and my family. I don't want to break all of their hearts.
No,
so it's
now,
hard, isn't it? Because
you're 61 now?
I'm 62. I had a birthday they said I wouldn't see. So, and I am fit and healthy. You wouldn't know that I meant to tell you this bit. The only side effects from my PARP is that I'm sick, okay? And I flatly refuse to take any sickness tablets. I will not have them because they're steroids and they turn on the seed cocks too, don't they? Yeah. So I've never taken them. So once a week, usually at the stables over the muck heap, I am violently sick, and I mean violently sick. Then I just have a drink of water and get on with it.
Okay. Tips for other people. Got 3 tips for other people with ovarian cancer?
Yeah.
What you got?
You have saved my life. I can never, ever thank you enough. And you continue to save my life. And for that, I will be forever grateful. I'm so sad that you lost your Catherine, but I am so grateful that you've saved the rest of us. So you, my biggest tip be tipped 1, 2, and 3. Okay. And I said, without you, I would not be here. And I don't care what anyone says to me. They say, oh, Chris isn't a doctor. And I say, but I trust him over everybody else. And I am so grateful for you. So that is the first tip. Secondly, go in the chamber. It makes such a difference to all the well-being and everything, all your chemo, I've not had radiotherapy, but all of that. Exercise, take your supplements, rebuild your gut, live your life to the full. Try not to live in fear, which is sometimes so hard. And don't believe everything the oncologist said, because they got their rules and they stick to them. But actually, you have to have a program around your chemo and around your treatment. Really, that's it.
That's absolutely right. All right. Well, thank you for your very kind words. And I think on behalf of everybody watching this, you're a kind of inspiration to us all. I think you've really done a fantastic job of integrative medicine, building your own program. And I'm sure other people with ovarian will learn from this. And this has been incredibly valuable, Sandra. So thank you so much for doing this show. It's really, really kind of you. And I will have you back in another 5 years' time, okay? Because I'm sure you're going to
hopefully. Thank you.
I said to you right at the start, my job's to be boringly thorough when I do a PP. Your job's to be determined. I think you've shown us all how to be determined. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.